Today, I want to talk about some of my favorite things that I've been doing since quarantine. Actually, I've been doing this since before quarantine, which is reading books and listening to podcasts and also listening to audio books. I just made a list of some of my favorite podcasts and some of my favorite books. One of my goals for this year was to read more books, and a way that I decided that I was going to do that is by incorporating a lot of audiobooks into the books that I read. So, the books that I read and listen to, a lot of them I just get from my local library. Some of the tools that I recommend that people use when they go to the library is making sure that you're using their online system so you can check and see if the library has the book that you're looking for before you get there. If I don't have it, I can order it and they'll send it to the library that is closest to me. Give me an email or text message, let me know when it's available, and I just go and pick it up. That simple. I can pick it up, in a couple of minutes, and it's just that simple. Or I could search for a audiobook, which is even easier because I don't have to go pick it up. It just lets me know if it's available or not. If it's not available, I get on a wait list. And the books that the library don't have, I am the sister who goes in and requests that the library purchases books that they don't have. I never buy any books new. I don't care about really reading a book when it first comes out, because once a book is published and it's out, it's there forever, right? So you don't have to be the first person to read it. The information is going to be the same when you get to it. I wait for those people, like my friends who like to buy the books when they first come out. I wait for them to read theirs, and then they sell it, and then I get that copy. Like, you don't have to read it when it first comes out. It's really not that big of a deal. Some tips for helping you read books a lot faster is doing a mixture of audiobooks and an actual tangible book. Either read 2 books and listen to 1 audiobook, or I would listen to 2 audiobooks and read 1 book. Like, in 3 months, I probably had read about 9 books. 9, 10 books. The technique worked really well for me because I was spending a lot of time in my car. So instead of listening to music or the radio, I would listen to the audiobook. That way made it so much easier to get through the books. Like, I was going through those audiobooks quickly because I had spent so much time traveling. The actual books, I usually just read before bed. These tips really help me to read a lot faster, mixing the audiobooks and the tangible books together. The list of some of my favorite books that I've read this year in 2020, I have a lot more books that I want to read, and so that's why I was trying to find ways to read more, because my list kept expanding. Most people's technique is just to read 1 book at a time, but it actually is better to read more than 1 book at a time, even if you're just reading a tangible book, because you could switch back and forth and the subject matters may be different. So you may be getting bored with book A and then you move to book B, and you're all into book B, and you may read a couple of chapters in that, and then you could go back to book A, and then when you're in the car you're listening to book C. So when you use that technique, it goes a lot faster. Of the books that I have read this year that I have really loved, Eileen Winterworth, I think that's what her name was, she had a book come out called More Than Enough. She was the editor of Teen Vogue, I believe. This book was amazing. This is probably one of the best books that I read this year. It's very inspirational. Oh, let me give you these thing is that I personally like to read self-help, biographies, autobiographies, memoirs, nonfiction books. I don't read a lot of fiction. I just like to read about real subject matters. Not saying that fiction books are not real subject matters, but I like to get inspiration from people who have actually done the things that they're writing about. And so I read a lot of biographies, autobiographies, and memoirs. And so Elaine Winterworth's a biography of her story becoming the editor of Teen Vogue and her journey to becoming that editor, and how she got there from her family dynamic, which was very inspirational for me, and I just love the story altogether. Again, that's Elaine Winterworth's More Than Enough. Second book that I read that I really enjoyed was Lovey IJ. Miss IJ is a blogger, and she also was in one of the podcasts I'm going to talk about in a bit, but her book was I'm Judging You, a Do Better Manual. It was really interesting book. I actually just finished reading that one a few days ago. A book about things that people do that she's kind of judging them for. So just things that we do in American society. Basically, she's giving them the side eye for the things that they do. Another book that I read this year was Dodging Energy Vampires. This book up a while ago. And when I was reading it, it was about empaths, and this was like earlier last year, and I was like, well, I don't think I'm an empath, so I'm not gonna read this book. I returned it, and then after living life for a year, read it, and it did give me a lot of advice on how to deal with people who will literally suck the energy out of you. And you have someone in your life that you are dealing with that is a narcissist, or if you just want to know how to point out narcissism or people who may be narcissists that you're around, and how to protect your energy and not be a victim of the energy vampire. Another book on my list is Through Blind Eyes. I'm actually not done with this book yet, and it is not nonfiction. I guess it is a story by Bobby Bean, who is here out of Cincinnati, Ohio. Through Blind Eyes. I'm not done reading it yet. I believe that it's a mixture of some fabrication and nonfiction, a story that she is actually writing from the viewpoint of somebody else's life, culturally rounded, and talks well about issues that women deal with in their life that they may or may not talk about. I will recommend that book. Like I said, I can't say too much about it. I'm probably about a third of the way through, but so far so good. I would definitely recommend it. Check it out, Through Blind Eyes by Bobby Bean. There was Rest in Power, the Trayvon Martin story. When Trayvon's murder happened, I did pay attention to the story, but I didn't know like the intricate details of the story. And so this book goes in detail of what his mother, his father, his brother, his family endured during the time before he was murdered, like how he was before he was murdered and after he was murdered, and the story of them trying to obtain justice. It is a very powerful book. It's a lot to deal with for someone like me emotionally, but I felt like I really needed to hear his story and read, just to know, that even though his family didn't get the justice that they were seeking for, that the movement really did kick off a lot because of his murder, and that his life was not in vain. A Roundaway Girl. A Roundaway Girl is by Taraji P. Henson. This is a really good book. I think that was a autobiography or memoir of her life. Her background was just so phenomenal, coming from where she came from, the support that she had from her mother and her father and her family, and being a mom in college, which is something that I personally had to deal with. So I really related with the book and the topics that she spoke about.
Union's book, we're going to need some more.
We're going to need more wine. I didn't think I would enjoy it as much as I do. I like Gabrielle's work as an actress, but her book is amazing. It really resonated with me. It was just very inspirational for me, and like I said, it resonated with me a lot. Is The Gear of Yes by Shonda Rhimes. I read this book. This is probably one of the first books that I read when I started switching over to the transition of doing all the different audio books and reading books. Talking about how she found out that she was saying a lot of no's to herself and to her family and to things that she really enjoyed, and that she had committed herself to saying yes for an entire year, and how that changed her life, how it changed her perspective, and how she manifested a better life just by saying yes to the things that she would say no to because she was living out of fear. It was Black Enough. Stories of being young and Black in America. This is actually my daughter's book. It's a book of short stories from teenagers, I believe. Phenomenal. It is not nonfiction. I believe that these stories are fiction. I was just reading it because it was on my bookshelf, and I actually truly enjoyed it. Stories from teenagers or young adults, and it really did resonate with me because some of those stories were me when I was younger. This is Just My Face by Gabourey Sidibe. I guess that is how you say her name. Follow her on the gram. So I was like, let me read this girl book. And I read it and I was like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. So good. In the beginning, she talks about how she had this film out, but she still didn't have any money and she was still living in poverty, and everybody was recognizing her on the streets, and she hadn't accumulated any wealth from that movie yet. And It's Just My Face by Gabourey Sidibe. I think that's how you say her name. I'm gonna have to look that up, see how you actually say it. The life-changing magic of tidying up. This book I read when I moved because I wanted to learn some new ways of keeping clutter down and tidying up, and it really did work. I did read this book in conjunction to looking at videos on YouTube and stuff because I needed some tutorials on like how to fold my clothes or how to put things in my refrigerator, how to put things in drawers, how to put things in a closet. Yeah, I really recommend reading this book and doing that method because it does help you stay less cluttered. I could fit more clothes into my drawers. I could see all the clothes that are in my drawers. If you're looking to tidy up, looking to clean up, looking to declutter, de-hoard, whatever it is, read that book. Life-changing magic of tidying up. The last book on my list is The Greatest You by Trent Shelton. This is a very motivational book. I didn't know who Trent was, but apparently he was like an NFL star. Even though he got injured, I think, and he thought that his whole life was surrounded around football. Turns out that he was meant to be a motivator. And moving on to my favorite podcast and repositioning my camera because half of my beautiful hair was cut off. But I'm not recording 20 minutes of that footage again. All right, so one of my favorite podcasts to listen to is The Breakfast Club. And why I like to listen to The Breakfast Club is because they talk about the culture. They talk about Black culture. They talk about things that are trendy. They talk about entertainment news. They talk about national news or international stories. They bring regular people on to have conversations with them. And I think that the job that they are doing is very phenomenal and influential into Black culture today, especially here in America. And they keep me up on my Black news. So, and when you listen to it on the podcast, you don't have to listen to all those commercials. Next podcast that I love to listen to is Serial. Serial is a podcast that is investigation podcast is what they call it. Now, I don't do scary shit. Everybody who knows me know I don't do scary shit. But I like Serial. Like the first season was my favorite. It was investigating a murder. I'm not going to get into the details, but it was investigating a murder, and the story was very captivating, and the person who was the basis of the podcast is still in jail, but it brought a lot of attention to his story. People started to kind of advocate for him to get out of jail. It's real good, y'all. So Serial seasons 1, 2, and 3. The Bomb season 1 is definitely my favorite. Another podcast that I really like is Life Kit. NPR Life Kit has a very wide range of topics that most people who are living life go through anyway. So, yeah, I would recommend it. I like it. It's very random topics. I want to learn how to do certain things, and you could go through there and search. They have tons of episodes that are already out, archived, that you could listen to. So just go back to the archives and see if they have any subject matters that interest you. Therapy for Black girls. I love Dr. Joy. I love the work that she is doing. Normalizing therapy. It's just not something that people in the Black community are normalized to. It's not something that is a part of our dialogues and talking to each other. We don't really talk about mental health things with our families as much. Dr. Joy is doing a lot of great work normalizing that, especially with Black women. Actually, it was her podcast that had me look more into chakras, and also a lot of the books that I read come from her recommended book list. Her podcast on my list is Atlanta Monster. Atlanta Monster is a non-fiction podcast. I really liked Atlanta Monster, and it resonated with me because it talked about the murders that happened in Atlanta to black boys and some black girls too in the late 70s, early 80s. Resonated with me because I have an uncle who live in Atlanta, and I would go visit him with my family as a young kid in the late 80s. And even in the late 80s, practically 10 years after these incidents had happened, there was still fear in that community, and we were not allowed to go outside by ourselves because people were so fearful, because there was this murderer going around murdering black boys, and they weren't sure that the person that was indicted and in jail for the crimes was actually the person. Jesus and Jollof, which is by Yvonne Orji, who was on Insecure. She's an actor and also a comedian. And La Vie Aj, which is the author of the book that I recommend that you read, the Judging Manual, the I'm Judging You Manual, are two Nigerian Americans who are first generation here in America, and so their perspective is different from mine. It's really interesting to listen to their perspective on things and how life is for them. So I really enjoy that podcast. In the Dark, which is also a investigational podcast. The story was very interesting, the perspectives that they had from people who live there, and then from the law enforcement there, and also from the business owners. And the scenarios were very, very captivating to my attention, and so I listened to that podcast as well. It's Small Doses by my girl Amanda Seals. Amanda also plays on Insecure with Yvonne Orji, and she has this podcast. It's a very intellectual podcast, so I like her content of her podcast. It does definitely make you think in different ways that are outside of my personal perspective. This is 5 Things by USA Today. I listen to 5 Things by USA Today because I love USA Today's newspaper. I got put on to it, and now I just listen to the podcast. The 5 top headers of the day. They release this podcast 6 days a week, every day except for Sunday. I love national and international news. Get that news, and it only lasts about 8 to 10 minutes, so it's really short. And I also listen to The Skim, which is also another news podcast I listen to from a woman, millennial, trendy, very viewed. And I like the way that they report the news. It's very trendy, catchy, but also very informational. 15-minute episodes, so check that out too if you like the news like me. I like Her Space. It is a podcast by 2 African American women that just want to make a space for African American women to actually just be who they are unapologetically. And I love that mission, and so I listen to them. Their topics resonate with me. It's very personable. They are very personable. I kind of just feel like we're friends and having a conversation. Angela Yee, Lip Service. Yes, I like Lip Service. Lip Service is raunchy. Lip Service is nasty. Lip Service, yeah, is nasty. But I like it because I like the way that she just kind of normalizes things, because a lot of people just don't talk about sex and stuff like that with their friends, which is what gets you caught up, especially when you're younger. Like, you should have other perspectives, especially from people older than you, because when you're young you think that you're the only one that's dealing with it, or only your friends are dealing with it, when reality these topics and these scenarios just continue to show up again and again and again. Even in your grandma may even dealt with it. So I just like how she reports the stuff, even though it's raunchy. I think it's informational at the same time, and it's a little bit nasty, so just listen to it. And the next one is The City, which is another investigational podcast. The City caught my attention because they had a season that was talking about landfills in Chicago. Peaceful yet toxic podcast. It is a local podcast here out of Cincinnati, Ohio. I'm going to say they are either millennial or Gen X black men who are doing it. I like it. I like it because it's from a man's viewpoint. And it's three black men on there. They're having conversations and they're reporting out stuff, but they're also talking about their experiences as black men, black young men in America. That's it, y'all. That's my list of my favorite podcasts and books and audiobooks from 2020. The year of quarantine is what I am calling it. I can have some normal activity in my life daily as we go through these changing times. This is something that gives me comfort and also a part of my self-care routine. Check out the books, check out the podcast. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe and hit like if you like the content that Keisha's Corner is giving you.
Next time. Bye.